What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of FitBizU. I'm your host, Jill Coleman, and if you're listening to this on the day that it drops, it is Monday, February 17th, and we are opening the doors for a very special small enrollment of FBA 1 week from today on February 24th. So we are only opening the doors for this enrollment to those on the interest list for FBA. So if you go to the link in the show notes, you'll see where you can add yourself. There's absolutely no obligation to be on that list, but I am only opening doors for FBA, this cohort, to that list, and we are maxing it out at 40 students. So just to give you guys a little context, last time we enrolled in FBA, we had 180 new students. We are going to be capping this at no more than 40. So if you want to start with a very small, more intimate cohort and have a little bit more direct access to me to get started in your business, I'm going to be doing a special 4-week VIP coaching accelerator directly with me just for the small cohort. So go ahead and put your name on the interest list. All the details will be dropping next Monday, February 24th, as well as everything from what you get, what's included, all the scheduling, pricing, all that information. You'll have a handful of days to enroll. If you have any questions about it, you can always hit me up at JillFit on social media. Okay, let's get into today's episode. I want to talk about small things in your business that can feel like really big things, especially at the beginning of your journey. These are things that I think I wished that a mentor or a podcast had given me a heads up on when I was getting started in the business, because I spent a lot of time stressing and having anxiety around things that really were not huge dial movers. Now, of course, hindsight is 2020, and looking back, when you're in the thick of learning this new skill, it can feel really hard to have a level of discernment. So it's not your fault. I always say this, like, for most newbies to online coaching, everything feels really important, right? Everything from your website to your social post, to your handle, to your niche, to every single post that you put out there, to your first lead magnet. Like, because you don't have as many reps quite yet, every rep feels really big. And then you fast forward and it's been a year, you fast forward, it's been 5 years or 10 years, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, that one post is one of literally thousands of posts. It's like a drop in the pond. And so I want to remind you that if you are feeling highly anxious about a lot of the things in your business, some of them are important. Maybe we'll do a separate episode on like the small things that actually are real big things. We've done episodes in the past on like, if I was starting from scratch, these are the things I would focus on. If I was a beginner to online business, what are really the big diamonds I should be caring about? This episode is what not actually doesn't matter as much as you think it does, especially in the first year of your business. And I wanted to do this obviously because we are going to be enrolling for FBA next week. So it's timely, but also I feel like these things can present obstacles to taking action. When we're really stressed out about something or we don't know the answer to something or we feel like we're behind on something, oftentimes we will not take massive action because we feel like we're constantly second guessing ourselves, or we're wondering, should I be doing more? Should I be doing less? Am I behind? And we do a lot of, there's a lot, it puts forth a lot of barriers to action because we're worried about maybe the impact of some of these things. And so these are some of the things that I want to give you today, permission to actually not stress about, at least in your first 1 to 2 years of business. Okay. And even when you do address these things, if you do address these things, still, they still aren't that huge, but they feel really big in the beginning. So again, small things that can feel really big, I want to give you permission to sort of put them out of your mind, at least for now. Okay. So the first thing is having the top credentials or having all the certifications. Is being qualified important? Sure. But not every single person who starts a successful online business has a credential yet. Not everyone has a college degree. Not even everyone has a personal training certification. So I don't want you to hear me saying that it doesn't matter. I think certifications, more than anything, help you with understanding. I do not think that they help your business. I just fucking don't. If I go to someone's Instagram page and they're a PhD, I might be like, oh, cool, this person's a doctor, or this person's a PhD, or this person an ND, or whatever it is. It might register. So it does maybe give a little bit more credibility. But I certainly don't think that when I see like NSCM or, NSCA or NASM or ACE, like I love those certification bodies, and we provide CEUs and FBA for those. But I don't think that that person is any more qualified because they have those degrees. What I care about is, can this person help me And can they understand me? And that's exactly what your potential clients are looking for. They're not like, let me Google these letters. Like, it doesn't mean anything to them. Because remember, and goes into, sort of the second um, thing that feels really big at the beginning, which is this idea of impressing your peers. We'll talk about in a second. So oftentimes for us, we will get more and more and more credentials, or we'll feel hung up like we're not qualified enough, so that we can have, and it isn't conscious, by the way, but I do think that it keeps us from taking action. We're like, once I get one more cert, once I get this one more credential, once I finish this training, then I will have permission to then post on social media. And I just don't think that's the case. I see plenty of people who get certs and they still wait to post on social because they still feel like they don't have enough, credibility. So it's not that certifications don't matter. I just think they more matter internally for you. I don't think that they matter in terms of the success of your business. Now, of course, I do not want you guys doing disservices to people. I always think that people who are most concerned about credentials probably will be the least likely to do harm to clients because they're so worried about making sure that they're doing a good job. And I love that. Like, that's important to feel that way. But having a certification isn't the only way to be qualified. You're also qualified if you have a lot of reps. So, I think about my first personal training certification. I got in, like, I don't know, maybe 1999 or 2000 when I first started training clients. And I kept up with it while I was a personal trainer. But when I moved online and I started doing business coaching, I'm not keeping up with my ACSM. Like, I'm just not. And it doesn't disqualify me from being a personal trainer. I was a personal trainer seeing 12 clients a day for like 13 years. Right? Like, I know how to get someone a result. I have tons of clinical reps. That's another way to be qualified. Even if you're not keeping up with your CEs all the time, you still have the knowledge and you know how to get someone a result without doing harm. And then also, if you have your own story, if you have your own story of transformation, you can still share your story without prescribing, like, someone to do some crazy diet. You can say, hey, let me share with you what's worked for me. And luckily, this is actually working really well on social right now, which is like, if I was someone who wanted to X, Y, and Z, here's exactly what I would do. So it's really putting you in the driver's seat and saying, like, hey, let me just share my experience. Let me share what works for me. You're not prescribing, you're not curing, you're not diagnosing. You're literally just saying, I want to share my journey. How many of us have, and you guys have seen this, like, I'm going to do my first figure competition. I'm doing my first powerlifting competition. I'm having a baby, right? Like, people take you through these journeys with them. They're not saying, I know everything. And they're not saying, do as I do. They're just saying, let me take you along for the ride. And if that is your quote unquote credential, that's your credibility, is that you have had the transformation that now you're helping others with, then just talk about your story. That's fine. You don't have to go to the biochemistry. You don't need to know the science. You have to cite your shit. If that's not the way in which you show up as an expert, totally fine. Just stick to your story. And then if you end up getting a certification, great. Speak to what you learned in the cert. And from there, you can build on that. So number one is needing to have the top certification or all of the credentials. You need to feel confident. You need to not do harm, but you could at the very least just share your own experience. Having a small following is number two. So number two is, it's a small thing, but it feels like a big thing. My following is too small. I hear this all the time. I'm just getting started. Y'all, everyone who gets started has a small following. They wouldn't be a beginner if they didn't have a small following. So I don't expect that when you guys are starting and something like FBA that you're going to have a big following. I don't expect that. You're just getting started. Most of the people who are connected with you right now are friends, family, acquaintances. And I think that this is a good thing. Remember, these people who are following you already know you, like you, trust you, which means that if you put out a coaching offer, these are going to be your first clients. They may not be your ideal client. Some of my first clients were like my cousins and my aunts. They weren't my quote unquote ideal client, but they were the people who already trusted me and I already had a relationship with them. And so over time, you will start to bring in more quote unquote ideal clients, but the people in front of you already have a relationship with you. They would much rather buy from you than buy from that Instagram influencer who has 2 million followers. They don't have a relationship with that person. And think about, if someone follows you on social media today who's a stranger, it's going to take some time to build a relationship with that person. Very few people follow and buy the same day. Like that would be great if they did, but most people don't. They're like, I'm going to follow you, which means I'm going to just try it on. Let me just see if I like following this person. Let me see what their content's about. And now we know it takes probably 10 to 15 touch points of them like resonating, connecting, building a relationship with for them to end up buying for the most part. So we have to have that depth of relationship, and you're just not going to have that with a larger audience. By nature of having a larger audience, how could you possibly have relationships with 300,000 people? But with 300, you could. And so I think having a small audience, especially in the beginning, is a massive benefit because everyone already who is following you is a potential client. Second is that you can mess up. Everyone is already on your team. So this is the best time to be bad at social media because these people don't expect that you're going to be at the level of mastery quite yet. They're not looking at you just getting started and being like, oh, she doesn't know how to be a videographer. Like they don't expect the same from you as they would expect if someone had 100,000 followers. Someone at 100,000 followers is a different level of accountability. It's like, look, bro, you got this huge following. Like you got to do better than this. There's accountability there. There's responsibility there. And if you have a small following, there's very little expectations of how good you're going to be. Now is the best time to have your shitty first drafts, like mess up. Like this is the time where your shit's maybe not going to look that good and you're going to stumble over your words a little bit and you're going to say a million times and you're going to ramble on and like all those, that's part of getting better at this skill set. So I think it's a benefit to have a small audience because you can mess up. And again, these people are already on your team because they're already people you know. Also gives you an opportunity with a small audience to test out your message and gain clarity on what you like to post. I asked the Movement Maestro one time, because one of the things she has people do in her Instagram intensive is they have to post every single day. And, she helps them with consistency and things like that. And she asked them to post every day. And I asked her, like, why do you do that? Are there expectations like, oh, I'm posting every day, I'm going to go viral? Like, look at my huge following. She goes, no, it's for them to figure out who they are, to understand and figure out their voice. And so over time, if you build reps and you show up for yourself, you start to figure out like, oh, this is more my message, or that's really not me, or I don't really like talking about that, or I get more traction when I talk about this. Without reps, you get none of that insight. You get none of that data. And so I love the idea of testing out shit, messy stuff, when your audience is the smallest because that's the least amount of people who are going to see it. And then you learn about yourself and how you want to show up so that once you start bringing in strangers, you start building your audience, you know what your message is. The shit is tight. So I do believe that a lot of people put too much emphasis on growing their following versus just serving the audience that they currently have and realize that their audience will come so long as they post for the audience that they're trying to attract. Next thing is needing to have a website. Now, I do think a website is important, so I'm not going to say that it's not, but it's certainly not important in the first couple of years. I have clients who, for years, built successful businesses without having a website. They used social media, they used YouTube, they used a third-party software, something like Lead Pages or Kajabi to host courses or to host landing pages or opt-in pages or sales pages. So over time, do you want to have a website? Sure. But I don't want you to spend any of your money on a website until you start having money coming in. And you can do that, all of that with social media, Google Docs, like the tools are out there. The free tools are out there. You do need an email list for sure, but you can do everything with social media and an email list. So over time, yes, spend it on a website, but I always say that sales solve everything. Once you have money coming in, sure, then put it back into your business. But for right now, let's just focus on generating revenue. And you can do that without a website over time. And I will say, by the time you guys get ready to launch your website, you'll know much more about your message. At this point, JillFit's been in business for a long time, but we've only had 3 different websites total in all of that time. And each time we have redone the website, it's been because we've made a huge brand pivot. And until we make another brand pivot, I'm not going to touch that thing because it's a lot of money, it's a lot of time. And I want to make sure that I'm clear on what I even want to say on that shit. So if you're new, you might not even know what your message is yet. You might not even know who you help yet. You might not even know who your niche is yet. So why are you going to spend the time and money to do a whole ass website when you might have to change it in a year? So wait on that. Next one is needing to know, speaking of ideal client, needing to know your exact niche before posting. This is a massive obstacle. I see a lot of new students and I understand why. It's like, I want to get it right. I don't want to mess it up, or I don't want to bring in the wrong person. If I have the wrong message, I'm going to attract the wrong person, or I'm going to repel the right people. The problem is that you're not going to actually know your niche until you start posting. You're just not going to. You're not going to have clarity on it. You're not going to really understand until you start getting those reps out there. And that's the way that you start to nail it down. If you create content, you start then having conversations in DMs, you start doing some market research, you have more people inquiring, you're getting on more sales calls, and you're starting to go, oh, like I did 5 sales calls this month and everyone was talking about this. And oh, that is something that I want to spend more time on. Like, you just don't have the insight quite yet. And so I think that the way, instead of sitting here and doing like, client avatar exercises constantly on a piece of paper, I think you just have to publish with what you think like your best guess is. And then from there, you will tweak and tweak and tweak and tweak. We've changed our niche like 3 times at JillFit. And even within those 3 big pivots, we've made small pivots, so even when I look at like business coaching, it's like, okay, but who? So I just recently changed my bio to helping fitness professionals make their first 100K online. Yes, do I work with people that make a lot more than that? Sure, my mastermind and things like that. But I realize that the majority of my students are FBA students. They're newer to the space and they want to make their first $100,000. And then from there, they can graduate to the other containers that help them make $1 million. But it's like, that's my thing. Even within fitness, we've switched to, now we have an ad running right now that's for women over 40. I started JillFit when I was 29. So it's like fitness for women over 40. It's not about getting like lean and shredded anymore. It's about like feeling good, looking like a badass, like feeling strong as shit and maintaining muscle mass. Different pivot with under the same umbrella, different demographic. So over time, it's going to change anyway. So don't wait for it to be perfect. You have got to publish, because the more imperfect times you publish, the more closer you will approach perfect. Lastly, small thing that can feel really big is just post in general. And we have a saying at JillFit, my FBA girls know this, and guys, we say post and move. It's like a hashtag, post and move. Because at this point, y'all, like, every post feels really big. When you don't have a lot of posts, every post feels really big. This is why when you're 10 years old, when you were a kid and you're 10 years old, every summer felt like it was forever. Remember the summers you weren't in school? It was like, this is the most boring summer. It feels so long. Now think about how fast time goes by, because we have 40 years instead of 10 years. If you only have 10 years, every year is going to feel really big, but you have 40 years, now they feel even smaller. Same exact thing. The more you get your post rep count up, the less important each post becomes. And you start to see your business not as individual posts that matter a lot, but instead you see it as a body of work. You're like, all of these 4,000 posts create my body of work. This is why, like, I know a lot of people on their website, if they were bloggers or whatever, they'll go back and like delete old blogs that they don't like. I keep all of my blogs at jillfit.com. And the reason why, if you want to go to jillfit.com/blog, you'll see we have over like 800 blogs on there, and some of them ain't good. But I always keep them because it's part of the journey. Someone could go to jillfit.com and search Moderation 365. They could search nutrition. They could search workouts, and they would just get a shitload of posts about that one thing. And I like that all of that's there because it's a huge body of work. I'm fucking proud of that. And I wouldn't get to the messaging and the client that I have now if I had not done all of that work. And so I want you guys to see all of your posts as just tiny little drops into the pond, right? I call them like little deposits into the trust piggy bank. Every single time you post, you're just posting it's this one little deposit into the trust piggy bank that is going to give an impression to a potential client that you have authority. I go to your Instagram account and there's only like 5 posts. I'm like, this person ain't credible. But if I go in there 500 posts, I'm like, oh, this person is the real deal. This is a serious business. I feel safe giving my money to this person. I need to see you guys post and move. Post and move. Like I shared with you before, I don't even look at my likes anymore. To me, I'm just like, did I post yes or no, period? Because I'm building a body of work that then speaks for itself. So I know a lot of these things can feel really big at the beginning, like I got to get it right. And so that's when like our perfectionism comes in, our imposter syndrome comes in. But at the end of the day, these things, they feel and they take up a lot of brain space. but they are really small things over time. And I want to remind you guys of like the bigger picture. That's why I wanted to do this episode, to give you permission to like not stress about these things. And I can only tell you that from experience. And I think a year from now, when you've posted another 300 times and you built your email list by 200 people and you've launched, multiple times, you're going to be like, oh, yes, I get it. But that's how it works. You have to earn the right for shit to feel a little bit easier, for things to feel a little more aligned for you, a little bit more in flow for you. You have like ease. Oh, it doesn't take me so long. I don't have all the mind games and the mental aerobics I used to have around posting, because I just post and move now. And so if there's anything I can leave you with, is realize that there are so many moving parts in your business, and your bandwidth to worry about all of these things is finite. So we have to figure out what can just go on the back burner. This is what Layla Hermosi calls like little fires. Like, what little fires can we let burn right now because it's just not the most important thing on the plate? And I would say these small things, if they're causing you anxiety, they are small, little tiny fires that you can let burn for right now. Focus on the bigger things that are going to move the business forward. Good? All right, guys, thanks for being here. As usual, if you have questions about FBA as we're leading up to the enrollment, feel free to shoot me a message. But all the details will be dropping a week from today on February 24th, only to those on the interest list. The link is in the show notes, and I will see you on the next episode. Bye, guys.